friends, this is Christopher Davis-Shannon. Today I'm going to teach you the 1945 classic, Let It Snow, Let It Snow, Let It Snow. In this video we're going to go through the chords for both the A and B section of the tune. This is an A-A-B-A form. We're also going to talk about reharmonizing the A section or trying alternative chords in there to give it a slightly different feel, as well as walking through a chord melody, intro, and outro. Let's get started. This tune's in the key of C and is going to utilize mostly open position chords that you likely already know. So we're going to be starting out on a C major chord for 2 beats and going directly to a G7th chord. Right? And remember that when we're going back and forth between C and G7th, keep that ring finger in contact with the A string the entire time. Just give us a nice smooth motion between the 2 chords. As we go back to this C major chord, we're going to play it for 2 beats. We're going to add a passing chord in here. We're going to use a C diminished 7th chord in here. So you'll bar across the 2nd fret. The middle finger will go on the 3rd fret on the E flat on our C string. And the ring finger stays right where it is on that C right there. We'll play that for 2 beats now, and then we'll resolve down to a G7th chord. So let's listen to the first line. 2, 3. Oh, the weather outside is frightful. The fire. All right, so you can hear that nice passing tone we have with that C diminished 7th chord. And then rhythmically, we're going to repeat exactly what we did. We'll have 2 beats, but now on a G7th. And it should be noted that we actually can use a G major chord here. It doesn't have to be a G7th. It could also be a G6th chord. Any of these work, as those upper ranges of it are not used in the melody of the song. I prefer a G7th here, but different versions use different iterations of that G major chord. What's really happening here is we're kind of temporarily modulating to G for a moment. So we're playing G and then for 2 beats and then going up to a D7th, 2, 2, 2, 3, which is our 5 chord, our dominant chord in the key of G, and directly back to that G7th for 4 more beats. So we just have the same rhythmic device, just different chords. G, D7, G. So you see, we're really doing the same exact motion between the chords. We're just starting on a different chord. And that's exactly what's going to happen in the next line as well. Next, we're going to temporarily modulate to D minor, which is our 2 chord in the key of C. And so if we want to find our dominant chord, it's just the 5th note of our scale. So we have D, E, F, G, A7th. So we'll go D minor 7th for 2 beats, A7th to D minor 7th. And then we're finally going to go back, just give a big old dominant chord to get us back to C. So G7th. And as we do this, we're then going to resolve this down. Let it snow, and make this a G6th. Snow, that is our melody note. So we're going to help support that by going from G7th to G6th, supporting the melody and resolving to C. So let's play this entire A section together with the chords and see what it all sounds like. And just note that rhythmically the chord changes are always happening at the same time, and really it's the same pattern of chords going over. We're just starting on a different chord each time that eventually leads us all the way back to our C major chord. So it sounds a little bit something like this. 2, 3. Oh, the weather outside is frightful, but the fire is so delightful. And since we've no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. And we'll put a big old G7th on there just to loop us back around, as next we're going to just repeat the A section as it was. So in the B section of this tune, we're really taking the idea that we did in the 2nd line of the A section, a temporary modulation to the key of G, but we're really going to hammer it home this time. So as we start out in the B section, we're going to start on G6th chord. We're going to play that for 4 beats, and then we're going to do 2 beats of an A minor. I prefer to do an A minor 7th here. Either works just as well. And then a D7th, 2, 2, 2, 3, and resolve right back to that G6th chord. And you can hear by having that A minor and D7th, which we call our 2-5-1 progression, it really leads the ear back and now makes us think that home base, instead of being C for the moment, is now G. Let's listen to this. when we finally kiss goodnight. How I'll hate going out in the storm, but if you'd really hold me tight. We're going to stay on that G6th for the next line, and then we're going to change things up just a little bit. We're going to use all dominant chords to lead our ear, getting us back to C. So we're going to go A7th, all the way to your D7th. Home, I'll be warm. And now we have a big old G7th, which is telling us that we are going right back to our A section and resolving that back to the key of C. So let's listen to the entire B section and see how it's fit together. 2, 3. When we finally kiss goodnight, how I'll hate going out in the storm, but if you really hold me tight, all the way home I'll be warm. It leads us right back to our C major chord. And after this, we'll just repeat the A section one last time. So now it's time for us to talk about the intro and the outro of the song. Now, we don't just start tunes out of nowhere, so we really need an intro and outro to get us into and out of this tune. So for the intro, we can do this all over top of a G7th chord. And what we'll do is just cop the melody from the last few bars of the tune, but elongate it a little bit, much as we would do at the end of the song. So we'll be playing a G7th, and the melody we're listening for is this. So that is really just a scalar motion starting on the second fret of our A string, that B, and walking all the way down to our open C string. So how do we do this with chords in here? So the first strum we're going to do is just straight across a G7th chord, and then when we up strum, we're going to lift up the ring finger so that we now have an A in the melody, and then come down with a downstroke, just hitting the G string, maybe the C string in there as well. So here's our first few notes. Then we'll just strum through our regular G7th chord 2 times, and then we're going to bounce off that G string again, and we'll walk down F to E, so the first fret of our E string, and then the open E string, we just pluck that with our thumb. And then we strum through 2 more times on the G7th, and we walk down from the E to D to C. So we've opened E, and then the second fret of our C string, and finally resolve to our C major chord. So very slowly, here's the entire intro that we have. So I've just thrown a little turnaround in here to get us back and give us a little bit of space before we have to start singing. So we'll go C major to C sharp diminished 7th, D minor 7th to G7th. And that just brings us right to the top of our A section. So let's look at how we end this. And I've just arranged this with the stock intro for the month of December, which is a little bit of Jingle Bells. We can throw this on any tune that's in the key of C, and it's a great ending. So it starts on the 3rd of the chord. So we'll put our first finger on the 7th fret of our A string. This is putting an E up top on our C major chord. And we'll strum this 6 times, really. And we're going to strum it once more up to the 10th fret. There's our G, and then down to a regular C. And then we want to throw a G7th chord in here, but we need a D on the 5th fret of our A string in the melody. So we're going to use a 3rd inversion G7th, which is open, 5, 3, 5. We've played this one a lot before, and then just resolve that to our C. We can resolve it either to the 7th fret or just down to your root position C. So here's our whole outro of the tune. Now let's look at some different ways we can play the A section of the song. So when we're arranging songs, we look for the right chords, but there's not always just one set of right chords. Of course, there's what the composer originally intended, but that doesn't mean that reharmonizing it or trying to put different chords over top of this wouldn't sound good, and you can't make your own version like that. It's perfectly acceptable. So let's just look at a few substitutions we can use in this A section just to hip it up a little bit if we so feel like doing that. You don't have to. So we know that we were starting on C to G7 to C, right? But what if we didn't start out on a C major chord? What if we didn't have this tonic chord here and instead presented a 2-5-1 so that we finally resolved to the C in the second bar, giving us a little bit of tension? So what we can do is actually start out on a D minor 7th to a G7th, each for 2 beats, and then resolve to our C. It'll sound a little bit something like this, and listen to how the melody interacts with the harmony. It's very different. I'm going to play it first, just our standard way. Oh, the weather outside is frightful. Works just fine, it's nice. Here's with the reharmonization. Oh, the weather outside is frightful. Here it really just creates this little bit of ambiguity right from the start. We're not quite sure what key we're in, but then we resolve to C, and it's this big breath of fresh air as we get there. Now after this, we're going to keep it really the same. There's not much we can do with the next couple bars. We have C, and then our C diminished 7th down to G7th, right? But after this G7th, previously we were going D minor 7th, A 7th, D minor 7th. But what if we did something a little bit different? Let's throw one of those 2-5-1s in again. So we're using E minor 7th to an A 7th. So the second chord in the progression is still the same. And then resolve it to a D major. Now this is a hip little change that we can do. It was actually used in the original sheet music for the tune. It didn't resolve to a D minor again. It actually goes to a D7th. But most recordings that you hear will have a D minor. But because we're not using the third in the melody, we have the opportunity to play with the value of this chord, whether it's major or minor or a dominant 7th or a major 7th, right? So we can really make some decisions here and have some fun with it. So usually we'd have, and since we've no place to go. But instead, let's sub out. We'll go E minor 7th, A 7th, D 7th. So it's a little bit different of progression. And since we've no place to go. See that D major, that D dominant 7th with the major 3rd as opposed to a D minor 7th. Because this is a little bit of a different sound going in. And then for this D7th, we can actually play that C diminished again to get us back to a 2-5-1. So instead of the last bar, remember a G7th, G6th, we can now play D minor 7th, G7th to C, which is just a slightly stronger sense of motion and just a more common progression that we would hear. So let's listen to this with the reharmonization. Maybe you don't like it. Maybe you do. Maybe you want to try your own chords. It's all up for interpretation. Oh, the weather outside is frightful. The fire is so delightful. And since we've no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. So a little different feel if you want to try something. So now we have this. Let's put the whole tune together and see what it sounds like. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Oh, the weather outside is frightful, but the fire is so delightful. And since we've no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. It doesn't show signs of stopping. Some corn for popping. The lights are turned way down low. Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. When we finally kiss goodnight, how I'll hate going out in the storm. But if you really hold me tight, all the way home I'll be warm. The fire is slowly dying. We're still goodbye, as long as you love me so.